Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I am joined by Amanda Thompson, and we have our wine, so we're happy about that after a long day.
It's been a fun day.
It was a fun day.
It wasn't slow, but it wasn't like too much.
What kind of work do you do? Is it?
I work at a sign shop, actually.
Oh, so you kind of get a little bit of your digital.
Yeah, and I've only been there. I haven't been there quite a year yet. It'll be a year in June.
Yeah.
Before that, I did retail.
What a place! What a time to start a new job in 2020.
Oh God, yeah. It was really exciting because that was a whole I graduated in 2016.
From
the University of Lethbridge, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
And in digital, I'm just going to keep it. And in digital arts?
No, actually, no? I have a BFA in a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Art Studio.
Oh.
So I did the whole advanced studio, senior studio stuff, and this is like the interesting thing, I guess, that people find interesting. This is how I got my job, actually. Is when I went to university.
Yeah.
I strictly was like, I do digital art at home, and that's what I like to do. I have a tablet. I have I had Photoshop at the time, and now it's like Clip Studio, and I digitally paint, I guess, and do my illustrations, comics, cartoons, that kind of stuff. But when I went to school for art, I was like, I want to do everything traditional.
Oh,
so I did all painting and I did sculpture. I'm not very good at 3D, but but I did sculpture, I did mixed media, but it was all like traditional. I didn't do tablet stuff. I didn't do computer stuff really. I did a few that was kind of like a photography class, or there was like a video editing class thing that was
manipulate.
It was in the fine arts thing, so it was like you cut together videos and you see how you can make an abstract video or whatever. So it's like that was it was technically digital, but otherwise I was like, no, all the comics and cartoons, I do that already. I want to learn kind of from the basics, and that just is kind of from my own opinion, I guess, that if you want to learn how to paint, transfer it into a digital format, you got to learn how to actually paint. And
it's interesting.
From the ground up, kind of learn all the techniques and stuff, and then you can apply that stuff. So you know how to make it look like a watercolor, because you know how watercolors act, right? So
Right. Oh, that is interesting.
So
well, because I read somewhere too, maybe it's just even in our email exchange, and you had said about painting in the same. What did I even write it down? Replicate oils. You can replicate what that looks like. So that must be something, again, where you're talking about it, where you know what oils do because you did paint in oils. And so what does it mean to replicate that? Does it look like an oil painting, or?
It's like there's a lot of stuff with digital program stuff, especially with Clip Studio and even Photoshop, where you can customize your brush to do certain effects, and people even customize them and then sell them, and then you can buy brush packs and install them into the Clip Studio, and then you have this brush has this shape and it has this kind of effect, right? And that there's a lot of chasing of getting the feel of doing an oil painting, but it's in a very forgiving medium where it's I made a wrong stroke there, I can just backspace, delete it, and then try it again, right?
What about for blending and that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, I know there's brushes they'll just blend the colors that are around.
Really?
And they're really good when you get working with them, that you can get a good kind of I want this to be a little more red, but I don't want to just plop red on. So you put it on, but then you can kind of blend it in like you would an oil painting, right?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So there's that, and then there's replicating the look of an oil painting, so you can get brushes that have a texture in them, so when you stroke it kind of looks like a dry brush effect. Right, and so there's a lot of chasing of that. And there's a lot of really good brushes that you learn how to work with them, and you can get that effect. And then just the feel of it, it just feels nice when it behaves the way you think a paint would, but it's a digital bunch of pixels, right?
So if you make a mistake, you can just
you can just control Z. There you go.
Unlike oil painting.
Although
I'm not an oil painter. I'm trying to learn it, but it's not.
It's one thing you have to get used to is it doesn't dry. You do with acrylics, and it's it's dry now, and I wanted to blend that, but oil, you can go back and blend it.
Yeah.
It takes weeks to dry.
It's funny, my mom was saying that. My mom's been joining me in my studio at least once a week. We get together and paint. Mm-hmm. And that's what she was saying. She was like, because when she did oils, she's only started doing acrylics, and she'd been painting with me. And when she did oil, she'd take little tiny bits because it would last, it would stay
Yep, yeah,
wet,
you could go back
it was all
and work
those
with
things,
it.
right? And she's like, with acrylics, I leave it like that, and now it's hardened up. Now
Yeah. It's dry now. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'll just paint over it.
Yeah. So getting that. So when you're doing that, does it replicate oil in your mind? Do they look more like oils rather than acrylics?
Well, I don't know. It's digital art is definitely cleaner. Mm-hmm. Like it's like you can really go in and clean it up, and like you can always change stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a drying time because it's just a bunch of pixels on a screen. but it's an interesting thing right now specifically is this kind of year's art goal for me, because I've been trying to set kind of certain, I don't know if standards for myself is the right way, but like certain goals I guess, for myself for like every year. So like last year was like just try to actually complete like a whole illustration instead of just being like it's a sketch with colors on it. Yeah. Like actually do like a full high res image like once a month, right? And so I would make and it really felt like it pushed me to actually be more like complete things instead of just being like it's half done, whatever. Yeah. So this year is actually like I want to try and get a little more back into like the painting aesthetic. Yeah. Because I always do cartoons with like hard lines, hard shadows, bold colors, right? And so I want to try and get into, even if it's like digitally doing it, like actually doing like painty kind of stuff that looks like more like a painting instead of just a hard like. I did the line art, I filled it with color, and I did all the shadows, right? Right. And I do have paints at home that I haven't touched for years because I'm like, I'm not in school anymore, woo! Yeah. But I still have like a bunch of oil paints. I have a bunch of acrylic paints, like the good acrylic paints, right? Yeah. And so I want to just, even if it's just a little, in my sketchbook like this big, and just like, just try painting a little bit. Yeah. And like, all right, I have this drawing, and I'll just do a paint over it of it. So, like I want to kind of get that feeling back and kind of expand into that territory that I feel like I've neglected for a few years because I didn't have to do it anymore. Yeah. Well, our lives take us here and there, right? And it was just the time coming in for you to do it. Oh yeah. Especially now that you have a job that you enjoy. Oh and God, that helps so much. It really does, doesn't it? Yeah. It's incredible how much energy I have after work now. I can get home and I'm like, well, I'm gonna go work on a comic now. I don't feel like I need to lay down and cry. Just take a nap for like the rest of the evening. I'm like, no, I had a pretty good day, and I'm just jazzed to work on something, my own stuff, because I've been playing in Corel all day. So. That's great, though. It's so nice to have that feeling. Oh my God, from a job. It makes a huge difference. Oh yeah, no, something that feeds you rather than vampires you and takes everything from you. Yeah. It's very, very nice. I was talking to Donna Gallant, an artist here in Lethbridge, a few podcasts ago, and she's joined a thing. It's from New York or something, but where you do a piece of work a day, so whatever it is, but you complete it. It's just a small piece. I think they just post them to Instagram. It's sort of all they do. But she was saying it was sort of this practice of art, right? So sort of like what you're saying, where it's having that commitment to do something, whether it's daily or weekly, or it seems like we kind of need those commitments sometimes. You just set your own goals. Yeah. Otherwise you're just like, I don't really feel like I'm doing anything. Yeah. So you do sort of like from comics to funny comics to you do a little bit of everything, right? I do. I my passion definitely lies with like I guess the time I figured out that I was funny was when I was like, oh wow, maybe people do think I'm funny when I tell a joke, and I don't think it's that funny, but everyone's like, yeah, that's hilarious. I'm like, okay. But I do like comedy and stuff, and I guess different styles of writing and whatnot. But I do like comics. I like reading comics. I've always liked how they're like laid out. And then you get over the terror of having to like, I have to draw 5 pages and I have to draw the same background over and over again.
Right.
And I didn't realize how hard this is. And you get more into doing comics. Pushed me to do more backgrounds, because I did the whole like, you draw a character and they're just floating in space, and you're like, I guess I could put a background behind it. It's hard, I don't want to do it. But you kind of have to get a setting with a comic, right? And you have like the establishing shot, right, where it's a wide shot and it's all background, and then you get into the characters having their dialogue, and then just the whole, I love laying out comics, just like laying out a scene and how like your eye follows through the panels, and like which direction do you go when you read the bubbles, and then when you go into Japanese manga it's the reverse, right? So you go in the other way. And it's just very like, I've just always liked that. And then I also like big like concept illustrations, where it's like it's concept art for a video game, so they're all these like classically trained fine art painters painting the scene, so that, you know, with these alien characters, just to be like, this is kind of what we're going for in the game, right? And then they can develop it to look like that, right? And develop what a character looks like, and it's like, I like that whole process of like, you do it and then you kind of review it and then you go, we'll make some changes with this, and then you do it again and then it refines, right? And like some of the concept art can be very, very beautiful to look at. I like that's probably my favorite part about any fantasy or video game stuff, is looking at the artwork behind it when they were just coming up with the ideas, right? Because they're usually very loose and fast, right? So I love that. I love comics. I love cartoons, and animation is really fun too, right? And I've dabbled in that before. The only reason I don't do it is because I'm not patient enough. I need to just if I don't complete something when I'm sit down to do it, I'm like, this is hard. I don't want to get back to it, right?
Sometimes it's enough. Sometimes it's enough just to do whatever you did, and you can put it aside and let her go, right?
I do just like a lot of people have told me like, wow, you're really fast. Like you do a drawing and then you already have it done, and it's like colored and stuff, and it's kind of rough, because it's sort of the idea is like as a sketch, but I put color on it, and there you go, right? And I'm like, there's this really fun scene from like the show that we were watching, whatever, and I'll like draw it and something. Lately it's been a lot of Dungeons and Dragons shows, so it is all theater of the mind, so there's no actual visual, so you're like, this would make a good like scene to draw, so you draw it, and then you share it with other people in that community. And they're like, wow, you go so fast. You draw it so fast. And I'm like, it's not because I'm like good. It's just because I'm impatient as hell.
Well, fortunately, your impatience is matched with
I've gotten myself grown to a point where I'm just like, I'm really fast because I just want to get this done. But I'm like, I know how to finish it, I guess. I'll draw this in an hour. But I'm like, I'm happy with it. There you go.
What's the difference between a comic and a cartoon? I know it sounds daft and like an easy one, but when I was looking through, I was like, what is the difference between those two?
Well, a lot of comics do take on like a cartoon appearance or whatever, but you can get some comics that are crazy illustrated, like they're just like, so it's the they're like really, really in depth. You can get ones like a horror comic. Right. Which it's like a story that's a horror theme. It's maybe got some gore and blood in it, right? And it's more realistic looking, right? Whereas like a cartoon is, I guess cartoons are more associated with like children's media, but that's not necessarily always the case. But they do have like a certain aesthetic, which is like usually they're harder lines, simpler coloring and shading, and a lot of like exaggerations of like features and stuff, so it's like the character design itself informs what that character's like as a personality, right? You know, and whereas like realism is more like, well, it's like how it actually would look, right. So cartoons are a lot more like exaggerating things, so the way I draw default, I guess, is more cartoony. I have my own kind of exaggerated style where it's like the eyes are bigger, you know, maybe on this character, maybe this one they're smaller, right? A certain way I draw kind of heads, mouth shapes are a big thing in the way I draw characters. I love exaggerated mouth shapes, they just look fun.
So your Instagram is full of characters.
Right now it's my D&D character. It's
so it's someone who knows what Dungeons and Dragons is, but that's as much as I know. I didn't recognize them. So that's where you've taken the characters from within the game.
Yeah,
and come up with your own visual representation of what they look like.
Yeah. Well, right now it's because I like many artists, they kind of have their muse and it kind of changes. I don't know, for me it kind of changes. I'll be kind of latched onto this for a while and I'll do art for this thing, and then I'll like, oh, I watched this show and I really liked it, and I'll do a bunch of like art of like those characters, and I'm like, oh, it's I like this, right? And then even just like fantasy stuff, it's like, well, now I'm really into elves, so I'll draw like elves, right, and like do like costume design or something like that, right? But right now it really is kind of boiled down to like I play a Dungeons and Dragons game with my friends. We try to go once a week, but it's scheduling, right?
Yeah.
And like it's a game that you play tabletop ideally, but we have to do it over Discord right now because of pandemic. But it's all theater of the mind, right? So you make your character, you describe how they look, but there's no like real like actual visual of it. And when you play D&D, it's like writing a book with your friends is how I describe it, because that's really what it is. You just you go in this world that the DM made, play your character, you have a whole story for them, and then you just play it out. You decide, hey, I'm going to go down to this place, and these person said they needed help with a quest or whatever, so we're going to go out and do that and fight some goblins, and get the thing, come bring it back. Oh, there's a plot twist in the story, right? And you just continue through it. So we'll get like scenes and interesting interactions that'll happen.
Yeah.
That I'm just like, oh, I want to make like a comic of this, right?
Yeah.
And it's like in a way I see it as like practice for like I can see how this would lay out, so I want to actually do it, to like be like, oh, I'm telling a little story of what happened. But I'm actually doing it. I'm not just thinking about, oh, you could do this and this and this, and not actually doing it.
Right.
So
right.
yeah, and then I just like I like playing my character, and I think he's silly, and I like to draw his stupid face.
So is your character always the same?
Yeah.
Or not necessarily. Or?
Always the same house.
It's always the same character.
Oh yeah. No,
yeah.
We were playing like a campaign that's like overarching. And so your character will like level up as you go.
Oh, okay.
And so you get new abilities, and they get stronger, and you get harder quests because you can handle them now,
Yeah.
And so right now it's like this campaign, it's this character, but we played like a previous campaign, and it was a different character that I made for that. But yeah, so yeah, I like to play him and flesh out his character, and it's like it's like a practice in writing. You get to create something, and then you get to like write and put life into them, and figure out what are their flaws, what do they like to eat, what is their favorite color, when they fight, what's their fighting style, right?
Right.
So it's definitely like it's a game that really I guess like it influences me, but it also like inspires me, I guess. It's I get a lot from that, a lot of creative energy from that.
It's so you're the first person it's made me want to play Dungeons.
Oh, really?
Right?
It's a good time.
Asked,
it's
like
a fun
3 or 4
time.
times I've sort of said, what is it? And people describe it, and I'm like, oh.
It's
okay.
Yeah.
But you describing it now, I'm like, actually, that sounds
I think
cool.
It depends on the group you're with and what the style of play is, because I've played with dungeon masters and with other players who like are not really the style that I like to play.
Right.
They're a little more like combat focused, so they're all like, oh, how can we get into this fight, and then like I can do the most damage and this, and they like to do all the math, and I'm like, math is hard. I usually just say like, that's the 16 plus 5, whatever number that is, does it hit? And they're like, yeah, sure, it hits. That's like what, 21 or something like that. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, I know it's enough to hit, it's just has to be over 18, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so like combat's fun, but it's like if that's what the whole game is, and there's been players who like, oh, we haven't had a combat yet this session, and they just whine. Yeah. It's kind of like, now we gotta like try to force ourselves into a combat. Yeah. And it's like, it doesn't really flow that way. I like the more storytelling aspect of it, where it really is like you're writing a book, right?
Yeah.
How does this character react to that person saying this? Well, this is what they would do, and would they want to help them out? What's their incentive? What are their goals, right? Do they have any side goals they want to achieve, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a very fun exploration of that. You just it's really just to hang out with your friends for like 4 to 6 hours and just write a book. That's really how it is.
4 to 6 hours. You guys have stamina.
Yeah. Well, 6 is like long, 4 is like short, so it's like 5-ish hours, right? But it's like an evening. We'll start at like 6 or 7, depending on when people are off work. Yeah. And we'll just go until like 11 or even later than that if we're like, none of us worked in the morning and we're just in it, so let's keep going, right?
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Are you one of those people? I'm one of those people at a cafe or pub is better, where you can get like a nice glass of wine, and sit on the street and watch people, and I like to write about them. But do you draw? Do you ever do that, where you kind of draw in public and you're drawing things you see, not necessarily trying to replicate the person, but do you have that desire to
not well I do like the idea of like drawing like in a cafe and whatnot. Now that it's summer again, I can kind of do it again, but last year I since I was at during the summertime working at a job where I could actually go out to I went to Bread Milk and Honey Cafe actually a whole lot. And then they were like, we have a little patio space now, and I'm like, what? You never had this before? You had the little thing on the side of the street, and it was awkward because people would walk by, and I was just like, you're too close to me, and I want to be outside, but it's just on the sidewalk. And but they have the cafe thing, the patio thing, so and that's really nice. And I actually would get I would get like I feel like reading this book today. Like I was working on the Aragon series at the time. Oh yeah. So I was like, I'd go down there and I actually have like an hour for my lunch break instead of like half an hour. Yeah. Because my boss is nice, so I would go and I read a book, whatever, or I'd bring my sketchbook and I would just draw on it. I wouldn't do a whole lot of like drawing, like other people or like things like I should probably do more like still life stuff just to get like a more feel of like how objects actually look. Because I do a lot of like searching up a reference on Google. Like I need to do a lamp, but like a cool lamp. So I'll look up lamp designs.
Next thing you know, you've gone down to a rabbit hole.
Oh god, my search history is hilarious sometimes. It's like it's just random things like a cool lamp. It's just a cool lamp, and this is kind of neat, and I'll put this with this, and trying to draw it out.
my mom will say, I can't find it, and I'm just like, put it in exactly how you would say it.
Yeah.
Like, I have a problem with my television, it won't do, blah, blah. And for sure, there's going to be someone else in the world that had the same thing and the questions answered. It's ridiculous what you can, I mean, it's great, but it's ridiculous. So with writing, does that kind of come along with the Dungeons and Dragons, or are you a writer kind of otherwise?
Well, writing it's another thing that like in more recent years I've kind of tried to kind of break into that a little bit, and I definitely have improved over the past 2 years or so. Yeah. Because where I was at before was like I was like I want to be at a better level. Yeah. Because I want to do more writing, and I was always like I don't really do writing. I do art. I do the illustrating part, right? But then I was like, writing, you can do some fun stuff with writing, and like I was trying to read more and like get more into like, okay, what makes a good story? Where do you put the plot twist? Where you deconstruct it down to like how do you repeat certain motifs, right? So that they become important later, right? Yeah. And change their meaning as they go. And it's like once you get into that and you start to get fascinated with the process of it, then you're like, then it's like I kind of want to get better at this, right? And the only way you get better is by doing it. It's a skill. You practice it, you get better at it, right? Yep. So that was another thing I would do is I have like a little like tablet that was like my makeshift laptop. I guess it's like an older tablet, but I have a keyboard on it. Mm-hmm. So I would just go to on my lunch break, go to a cafe, and I would write a little bit. Yeah. And again, this was like I was in like a community. Oddly enough, it was a Pokemon themed like art community that like we would compile our art into like a zine that we would sell, and then the profits would go to charity.
What
and
zine
so
was that?
It's Visor League is what it's called. Okay. And it's actually an international thing, and we just I think in either 1 or 2 days now the 2020 zine will come out. and then people can buy it, and then the proceeds go to charity, right? But it's like it started out as like just a little zine thing, and now it's like a huge like international community. And
we'll have to put the link there so that people
can
have a look.
And so people just artists, they just say there's a few rules you have to follow to be an applicant, right? And then you draw, and the content gets put into a zine.
Oh, that's
and
so
it's
cool.
just and people just talk constantly on the Discord, and it's just a really nice art community, right? And I've met a lot of people who live in like Ireland, like and it's like, oh, you live in Australia, you live in Ireland, but we just talk on this Discord, right? But yeah, for that, I actually would start to do little short stories that were about like my characters, and then I would bring other people's characters into it, right? And so we would have a scene that we kind of set up because we just were talking about it. It's essentially brainstorming it, I guess, just talking like, oh, what if all of our trainers went to like a gala or something, and what sort of stuff would happen at that? So everyone's all dressed in fancy clothes, so now we're all drawing our characters dressed in fancy clothes, right? And exploring all that, and then we're like, oh, and then maybe it's an event, and then something happens here because this character got into some shenanigans, right? And then how would that play out? How would everyone react to it, right? And so I would write I'm gonna write like a little short story kind of based on that idea, right? And then I would explore these like motivations and whatnot of these characters, and that was, again, I see this all as like practice for getting better at it, because I'm like, what else am I going to write about? Well, I'll write about this, right? And I definitely felt like I improved a lot more by the end of kind of that series of short stories I did. And like they're not like published anywhere or whatever, they're just like, I'd show them to people and they'd be like, oh, this is really cute. But I felt like I just got kind of better at being like planning it out and being like, okay, by the end of it, this is going to happen, but how do they get there? And like, what sort of stuff is going to happen and come up later? And is just, and so it definitely, it's, you just got to practice it, and then you get better at it, so you just got to find a reason to do it.
Have you done your own zine or comic?
I do have my own comic that I update infrequently because I'm really bad at kicking my own ass into gear. But I do have it, and I still have the website up because I do want to keep going with it. I just need to like get on it. It's really,
so it's a digital.
Exhausting. Yes, it's a web comic. So I did do like a backlog of pages, and then it was updating regularly, and it felt great because it updated every week, and then I ran out of the backlog and I went, crap, I gotta draw more. But it's called Misty Waters, like Misty with a Y instead of an I. I started this like years ago, when I was still in university, and I was kind of like, I want to do a webcomic. I want to have a comic that I can always kind of come back to as like my own story, my own characters, my own world that I made. And that's what it is. The comic? But, well, it's basically, I really liked pirates at the time, and like mermaids, and so it's pirates, and there is mermaids, but they haven't really actually come into the story yet, because I'm like, they come later. But again, it was like,
otherwise we will
like, I need to,
we'll call all the sailors to their death, right? Pirates to their death.
So it was, but it's like, I liked the seafaring pirate aesthetic, right? And so then that was the comic where like I would draw characters, and I realized I have to draw a background behind everyone, and I was like, oh my god, this is such a learning curve, right? And so I was like, and now I'm way better at doing it than I was, and I attribute that to just when I was really trying to update it regularly, and I was like trying to do these pages, and I was learning like, oh, this is how you lay it out. And there's a lot of pages even in like chapter 1 that I was like, oh my god, I could have laid this out way better.
We're all like,
and I could have done this background way better. But
you
it's
can't
like,
just cut and paste your backgrounds.
You can in some cases, but like when you want to make it interesting, you want to change the camera angles and stuff, right? So and I've done that before. If it's just like a comedic timing kind of panel where it's like there's like two of them next to each other, but it's like a pause or something, so they're just kind of like, oh, like they're stunned by a question or something. So you can like copy and paste that, and then just change like their mouth shape, and there you go. It's fine, right? But when you're doing like a big like cinematic scene, like the first 4 pages, I think are a lot of just background art, because it's like, oh, in this region, this is what's going on, and there's like a weird island in the distance. place, and it's kind of like no one's ever traveled there, and you see it, and it's like all this like establishing shots, I guess is what they're called, and
right.
And then it gets into like, oh, now these are the two characters of the main characters, right? And yeah, it was a project that is meant to push me to like, kind of think about writing and think about like laying out comics and whatnot, right? So I do want to keep updating it. I just got to get back into updating it.
Yeah.
But there's 5 chapters I think up on there right now. So because I've been doing it for a while, and then I'll get
us reading.
Yeah, and then I usually like I try to do like draw like at least 3/4 of a chapter, and then like have it scheduled to do it every week, like update every week.
Yeah.
I just got to work on it. Yeah, but yeah, no, so that's my own comic, and then it's just kind of nice because I can tell people, like, oh, this is the comic that I do, and at least you can read the first, like, 5 chapters of it.
Well, no, it does. It gives someone
it gives them kind of an idea of what I want to do. Yeah, but writing is hard.
When I first asked you to do the interview, you said that it's kind of hard for you to call yourself an artist, maybe, because you don't come from an abstract or philosophical.
Oh, yeah.
That must have been tough in university, because that.
Oh, yeah,
especially
it was interesting.
Did you go here?
Yeah, I went to University of Lethbridge.
Yeah.
I went.
Because they're very.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I went because I graduated high school 2011, and then went to university. So 2012, yeah, I guess. But I graduated in 2016 from there. And I wanted to do 4 years, but then I took my first semester of 5 classes, and I said, this is too much.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So
I could not do more than 4. If I was going to have a decent GPA,
oh, yeah.
there was no way.
I cut it down to 4, and I was like, I feel like I'm less stressed now.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how I had a friend, and when she was in school, she was doing a dual degree in marketing and art, and she would have some semesters like 6 classes, and
God.
she had 2 kids.
Oh,
and I was
God.
like, I have 0 kids, and I'm taking 4 classes, and I'm still moaning about it.
Still like, oh my God, classes. Yeah.
I know. Every time I talk to her, I'd be like, okay, Lorley, recognize how lucky you are. Recognize how lucky you are.
Yeah. It's like, it's only 4 classes. It's fine.
Yeah. My brain just, it's too much. And I think especially in the arts, and I think it's not given enough credit how much brain space we need.
Yeah.
So your actual
yes.
work is like such a small percentage of what goes into it, because we're constantly thinking about it. We're constantly trying to figure it out and tweak this and tweak that.
I had a fun thing that happened when I was in my advanced studio, so it would have been my 4th year. Because my cousins were also, like, they're the same age as me, so they were also going to the university, and they're in like, one of them's like a teacher now, so like a teaching degree, education degree.
Yeah.
And so more book learning, I guess. They don't have like studio classes, they have like their lecture classes, right? And so and I remember having, like, I was working on a project in my advanced studio, and there are times where you just stay overnight at the university because you're just like, I'm working on this until 3 a.m. and and it was like 7 or 8 p.m. and I had been like in the studio all day, just working on stuff, because I had like maybe 1 class that day or something, but it was like otherwise whole day just working on my stuff in the studio. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go upstairs to the PE building, and I'm gonna get myself like a coffee and maybe like something like a muffin from Tim Hortons or something like that. So I go upstairs, and I'm tired. I'm just like exhausted, right? And I get up there, and I run into my cousin, right? And she's like, oh, hey, like, she's like, oh, yeah, I'm actually just, like, headed on my way home, because, like, I was doing a bit of studying in the library and stuff, and she's like, yeah, like, I had a couple classes today and did a little bit of studying, and, like, now I'm just going home now. And it's, like, 7, and she's like, oh, yeah, it's so late, like, I don't usually stay this late, and I was just like, cool. I've been here all day, and I'm just taking a break. She's like, oh, you got like classes today? And it's like, yeah, I have like a project in my studio class, and I've been here since like 8, and I'm probably not gonna go home until like 1 a.m. And she's like, oh, what class is it that you're taking? It's like really long. And I'm like, oh, it's for my studio class, so I'm just working on a project right now. It's due like next week, and I need to work on it. oh, okay. I'm going home, right? I was just
See
like,
you later.
yeah, I'm getting my coffee and I'm going right back down there. So
It's funny, when I took my first studio class, I was like so excited because it was like, now you can do whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, and then I get in there and it's like terrified.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have no ideas. I have nothing. I am not a good artist.
Oh, we had what was it? Did they do this senior studio? No, they did this for both advanced and senior studio. The first project we had was the 20 things assignment. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember how long we had. We had like a few weeks to do it, I think. But it was like you have to make 20 things. That's it. That's the assignment. Just make 20 things. And you're like, oh, well, that's easy, right? You get to you make like your fifth thing and you're just like, oh God, I'm out of ideas. Oh no. I have like 15 more of these to go. You get to like 16, you're like, I'm only halfway there, I'm so tired. It's people. That was one of the ones that I was like up until 3 a.m. on the last night. Because I was like, I need to hang these up, and they just did landscape paintings, really, was what it came down to. Like these really blocky, abstract landscape paintings, and I was just like, I still have them in my house because they're just there, right? I hung a few of them up because they look nice, right?
Yeah.
But I I was just like, you get to number 6 and you're just like, I'm tapped out. Oh God, how am I gonna finish 20 things?
Yeah. Which is the idea, I guess, right?
Yeah, and everyone has the same boat, and they even warn us. They're like, yeah, it sounds easy right now, but just you wait.
Yeah.
Just go for it. Just you wait. You'll find it's not as easy as it sounds when you just are given no prompt other than make 20 things.
Yeah, exactly. Michael Campbell taught a video class there, and the very first assignment in that one was that we had to use every single filter was in or maybe we had to use 10 of them. Something ridiculous, right? Something ridiculous. And he's like, just get them out of your system. Because everyone does that. Like, especially when it first came in like 15 years ago. So a lot of it was new. Yeah. So people would do like horrible transitions. And you know.
That sounds like something Michael would do.
Yeah. He's great, isn't he?
Oh, I love him.
Me too. I miss him. Yeah.
Oh, he was very fun. I had him for a few printmaking classes, and it was just it was so fun.
I never see
like,
anyone
just do
around
it, just
anymore.
go for it.
Yeah.
Like, all right, sweet.
Yeah. No, I had him and Mary Kavanaugh. Did you?
Yeah, I had Mary. Yeah.
So they were my my very first studio class, and when I took that, I couldn't draw, so I just thought I wasn't an artist.
Yeah.
And then I took their studio, and I was like, oh, here are my people.
Yeah.
I was just like, I loved them so much. They were so different. Like the way they approach things is so different. But what a great foyer into. Is foyer the right word?
Oh yeah, foyer like an entrance.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. All of a sudden, it sounded completely the wrong word. But into art, because they're so different, and they both would pull out different things, right?
Oh yeah.
You, so.
I had Michael for my 3D foundations.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I got to take 3D foundations and 2D foundations. So I took them at the same time because I was like, first semester, woohoo, let's go, university, 5 classes, 2 of them are studio classes. This is gonna be fine. I'm young and naive, and so
exactly.
and when I went into those classes, I was like, I'm not really much of like a 3D person. I like painting, I like drawing, I like comics, I like a lot of 2D stuff is how I operate, right? And so I was like, but I have to take both of them, so I'll just take them both, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna like 2D foundations way more probably because it's more like my thing that I like to do. Yeah. No, I like 3D foundations way better than 2D. Yeah, and I don't know if it was just like the prof was, I didn't really like him. He was a little more like abstract and kind of like a gallery artist where he's like, oh, you gotta write like a 3-page essay about what this means, and I'm just like, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to think about all the abstract. I just want to make something that's kind of cool. And then, but you know, it is all like studying like we would do like shadow studies and stuff in the 2D foundations, right?
Yeah.
And then 3D foundations was like, all right, we're gonna. It was Michael, right?
Yeah.
And so he's like, all right, we're gonna make like a mold of your hand out of clay, but it's gonna be like a 2 times scale of your hand. So we're like, all right, so you take all the measurements and we make this mold of a hand. And then he's like, all right, so we're going to take that clay mold and we're going to do like a silicone cast of it, right? Yeah. So now you can cast it in different materials, right? Yeah. So like, oh, cool. This is like, all right. It's very hands-on and arts and craftsy, right? And so hands-on, yeah. And so... I wonder if that was an underlying joke.
Yeah.
But and then you make the mold. So now you're learning how to make the mold, right? And so I'm like, oh, I see what he's doing. He's taking a project and he's carrying it through all these steps. So you learn all this stuff, right? Makes sense for a 3D foundations class. And then it's like, all right, now you have this mold, right? And so you make like a plaster cast of the hand, right? And so it's like, there. So that's how you make a clay into a plaster cast. There you go. Now that you have this mold, make a mold of this hand using this mold, but out of a material, like something that isn't an art material. And that was like our prompt, and he's like, go nuts.
So what did you do?
So oh man, it was fun. So I got red Jell-O.
Oh,
and I made a Jell-O hand, but then I got some tinsel from like the dollar store, and I put that because I was like, I can't just make Jell-O, right? So I was like, I gotta put something in the Jell-O, so I put like this like silver tinsel. It's just kind of like little springy tinsel stuff, and I put that in there, right? And like, it was like I spilled a little bit of it. I'm pretty sure those counters are still stained pink. It was an apartment that wasn't even my apartment; it was someone else, right? And so I had it like on a stand because it's like, ooh, it's all wobbly, right? And it's like in the fridge. It was just precarious, right? And so I left it in the mold, right? Yeah. And I brought it to class. And then I put it down, and I was like, all right, please come out, because I couldn't take it out of the Jell-O mold yet, right? So I pull it off, and like it came off good, except the fingers kind of stuck a little bit.
Yeah.
And then and so they weren't perfect, right? But you could see all like the tinsel in it, and it looked pretty okay. And then as it sat there,
it started
kind of melting a little bit, and so the fingers really kind of went, and so then you start to see like the tinsels kind of sticking out, and I was like,
kind of cool.
Yeah, and I was like, it's not perfect, but like you can kind of tell it was a hand. So I'm like, maybe I'll get perfectly fine marks to it, whatever, right? And we have them all out on the floor. Yeah. And there's some pretty fun ones that people did. And we get to mine for the critique, and it's already kind of melted a bit, and there's the tinsel. And someone just goes, God, it looks like a bunch of like entrails. like you'd see in like a horror movie or like a zombie movie. It's just like the tinsel coming out, and I was like, it kind of does. It's red Jell-O with like silver tinsel coming up, but they're all squiggly, right? And I was just like, yeah, it kind of does actually. That was like really funny. Yeah. And it was just like, yeah, but it's like melting, so it's starting to like pool, and it's and I was like, that actually is pretty funny.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And did you like it?
Oh yeah, no, he was just like, it's made of Jell-O and tinsel. And it's slowly melting over time, right?
You always play good music in
class. And I think I put
too.
it on like a cutting board or something, so they're just like, and it's also just the fact that it's on like a cutting board. It's like, I was just like, well, that's what I had a cutting board. That's
yeah. Sure. Yeah, that helped with the gruesome factor.
Yeah, so like, it's just stuff like that made it so fun. And then it's like, oh, and I go back to the 2D foundations. All right, we're doing like light and shadow, and we're just shading something, right? And I was like, or I can make a Jell-O hand.
Which one's more fun?
Yeah, and we also did like a big, we did a thing that was like, I can't remember what exactly all the steps were, but we inflated like this huge like cube with like drop sheets basically, and we taped them together, and we made like a big cube. And then we it is sealed, so we put air in it, and so we turned into this big cube, right?
We did that too, but we had to do them individually. Yeah. And we used black trash bags.
Oh yeah, and I
think I made a coffee cup.
Oh yeah, we did something where we had to basically do like a pattern of something. and then we had to make that shape as an inflatable thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then we attached it to the cube. We like surgically attached it with tape and stuff to this cube thing, and so it was all deflated. And then he was just like, all right, inflate, and it like it fills up this whole space, and there's all these things sticking off of it.
Right?
And it was like, yeah, and then he was like, all right, now it's done, and it was just this big inflated cube in a room, and we're all like standing on the edge of the room, and it was very fun, because he's just like, now it's like think about how like surreal it is. And so now this gets into like where you talk about like what is it that it makes you feel, what is it that you're observing, right? Like, oh, we all have to stand at the side of the room because it takes up so much space, but it's full of air, it's really full of nothing, right? And so you get into all that stuff, which is interesting, right? And but it's just like, this is what I get to do in 3D Foundation. I tell people about it, and they're just like, just sounds like you're kind of messing around. I'm like, yeah, it kind of is.
It kind of is.
You're learning the limits of everything, and it's really fun, And that's why 3D Foundations was more fun than 2D Foundations. And I was like, I didn't expect this.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Makes sense for sure. So was that your favorite class when you're at university, do you think?
It was pretty good, but I always come back to how much I miss printmaking. I really loved printmaking too. Yeah, I didn't like silk screening. I hate silk screening. Silk screening's great, except the whole process of it takes eons, and then it's just like, I get to do a picture of a gear or something over and over again, and then you gotta do a whole process to take that off of that, and then you gotta do a whole process to make it into a different picture. It's just like, oh, and I couldn't get it right, and it was frustrating, and I was like, I don't like this.
I've never tried silk screening.
It's a lot of it, like 90% of it is just like, oh, you gotta do this thing, and then you gotta let it dry for 2 hours. Yeah. Then you gotta take it out, and then you gotta put this thing on, you put it in the light table thing, and then you gotta let it dry for 2 hours, right? And then you gotta do, and it's so much for like, I don't know, I don't enjoy that process. It probably was just because I was frustrated with it. It was probably why I was like, I don't like this, right?
Well, that's okay too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you can't all like everything.
Yeah, and I was just like, no, right? And I don't even think I took my deposit back for that year because I just could not get the screen clean all the way, and I was like, I can't do that. But for the printmaking class with the big rollers, oh god, that class was so fun. I loved that class so much. And
who did you have for that one? Did you have
Michael?
Glenn?
I had Michael Campbell. Yeah,
oh,
and
cool.
And it was another one where it's just fun, and you know, and I'm not talking just about the part where you're like, have your little plexiglass like sheet that you have, like, you file all the edges down, and then you're like sitting there, you know, in the studio for a few hours painting the ink on it to get a monoprint, right? Yeah. But you have the vent over your head, but it's still like a lot of fumes. And I was just, I think I drew like a little comic about that where it was just like, I'm just standing there and I just have this look on my face of just like, yeah. And I was just like, oh my god, this is the best class. And then just kidding. Like, I have to go take a break, right?
Printmaking was the first class so you know when you lift it up, so you've done everything. You've got it, you know, oiled up, not oiled, but
all the ink, oil ink,
and then you put it through, and then there's that moment when you like peel it back, and you're like, oh, please,
so
please,
intense.
Please be okay. Yeah. And that moment, one of the pieces I did almost made me cry because it was so like, it's so what I wanted it to be, but I never thought it would be. And it was just like, and that was my one time with a piece of art where I was just like, it's more than what I wanted it to be, and probably wasn't anything to anybody else, but it was to me, and it was just yes. It was just one of those moments that you don't have very often.
That's one of the nice things about printmaking is that that was the other thing too, is that it's you want to try and get yourself comfortable with a medium that isn't as forgiving. This is where digital art is almost too forgiving, because it's just like, I can just try that again, I can just try it again, I can just try it again, right? And then you get frustrated because you're stuck in this loop of like nothing looks perfect, right? But you get like printmaking, it's just like, all right, you spend all this time working on this like wood block, right, and carving it, whatever, and then you print it, and then it's just like I could maybe work, and then you gotta work on it some more, right?
Or you could do like me and do it opposite, right? Like you know how you have to do it especially if you have any letters on it.
Oh,
Text.
yeah.
Don't put text on your woodblock. Never, ever put text on your woodblock. Ever, ever, ever.
Always forget.
Lorley's tip for the day. Oh,
yeah,
man,
well,
that was terrible.
Yeah, but yeah, but when you do, especially monoprints, it's just like that's just what it is.
Yeah,
and then it's gone now. You can maybe do a ghost print of it right after, but like, well, now you got to clean it off and do it again, right? And it's you just keep doing it over and over again, right? And it's so what it is. It's just how it is. Whatever. You do a bunch of them and you pick your favorite 3, right?
Yeah.
And then but we also did zinc plate. Zinc plate. Mm-hmm. We didn't move to steel yet because I took printmaking 2 and we used steel plates for that.
Okay.
But the printmaking 1 we were still doing the zinc plates.
Yeah.
They changed it and I think it was funding. I don't know what it was, but but that was when he's like, all right, zinc's expensive.
Yep.
So you got to pair up with somebody, and you we'll split a sheet in 2, and then you can split that as much as you want, but you get this much space to work with.
Oh, really?
So I just did the whole thing. I was like, I'm not going to cut this into little bits like everyone else is. Like people would do 3. Some people did a bunch of little ones, right? And I was like, I'm doing the whole thing. It was like this big, and I was just like, go big or go home. I'm just gonna do the whole thing, right, at the same time. And then this was when this was during a time where I was playing a lot of Skyrim. And so it's all fantasy and dragons and magic and stuff. So I was like, I really want to do kind of something where you see if you ever read a fantasy novel, they'll have a map of the area, but it's drawn in a very calligrapher style where it's oh, you hatch to indicate the mountains are up here, right? And you do this shape to indicate hills, and I wanted to do something like that because I was printmaking seems like a map thing. You would do a map and then you print it over and over again on a plate, right? So that you could produce it. And so I did something like that where I did these hard lines, and then I would have hatching to indicate where it's a line and a dot, right, to indicate shading, whatever. And then I put a big dragon on the top of one of the mountains, and it was again kind of in that style of where it's a lot of hard lines and each scale is kind of drawn in, right? And it's a big dragon, and so I had to look up a bunch of pictures of dragons because I was like, how do I draw a freaking dragon, right? And that was my whole. It was this big. It was a big dragon at the top and a bunch of mountains, right? and I thought it looked really cool, right? And so I did the print before I did all the soft etching. There's all the hard etch, right? And so it was just this line drawing. Yeah. And it was just oh, it looks so good. It just came out so nice. And then it was all right, now I have to add all the soft etching. And that just made it look even better. Oh,
really?
Because everything was it was all cloudy here. And this was really, I think I made the dragon just white. And so it was really popped off the thing, right? And it was just the whole thing. If people did a bunch of series, I just did this whole thing, and it turned out so nice. And I still have the print and the plate. I still have the plate too, in my portfolio at home because I saved everything because I'm a hoarder of I did this in school. You want to see what I did when I was in year 2 of university? It's this portfolio. And so I have the dragon print. The only plates that haven't really survived that well are the steel plates from the printmaking 2. They've got a bit of rusty, but the zinc plate is still fine. And so I could do another print, but yeah, I still have those dragon prints that I did. That's cool. And they look so cool.
That's what everyone's getting for Christmas next year.
I'm just gonna print this over and over again.
It'll be in there. Well, have you gone and used at CASA the printmaking yet?
I did go there. I did because I was feeling really oh man, I miss printmaking so much.
CASA, just so that everyone knows, is our art center here in Lethbridge. It's downtown. It's amazing, and
they have a lot more stuff there than I thought they did.
Oh, it's so cool. They've got almost everything you can think of art-wise, and open completely to the public. You can rent studios. You can rent the print, or not rent, but I mean they have printmaking classes and pottery classes. And, and exhibitions and really great exhibitions.
Now that it's summertime and hopefully COVID dies down a bit, I want to try and get back because I did actually take the tutorial thing that you're supposed to take to be allowed to use the facility, the printmaking facility. So I did do that. I probably would need a refresher on it just because But the only thing is I'm not sure where to get copper, because they use copper for their copper for the etching anyways. Like I could, if I have a plate already made, I can bring it in and use the press, whatever, right? But yeah, no, they use copper. And I've yet to figure out where to get copper, and I think I was in the process of figuring it out. And
copper's super expensive now too.
Oh yeah. So like I'm sure there's places I can go get it. I know we got our steel plates from like VAR Steel. Zinc, I think the university just had them in stock from wherever they got it from. But so I just gotta find copper that can be used as a plate, right? And then I think they have like a cutter and stuff, and then they have the press. And they have all the stuff there, right? And so
such a great resource.
Yeah. And I really do every now and again. I'm just like, oh man, I miss printmaking. I miss it so much. It is. It really was probably one of my favorite classes. Of university was I took printmaking too because I was like, I just miss it. I want to do it again.
When I was there, they didn't have printmaking too, or I would have taken it for sure. Because I was the same way, and yet printmaking doesn't seem like it should be a match for me or the art that I do or whatever. And yet it's something that I
don't know. I think it's the process of it is so fascinating because it's just you spend time etching this plate, and then you just like you run it through the press, and it's just the whole like they had that big press at the university. They have the really tall one. That friggin' thing is awesome. I love it. It's got all the blankets layered on it, and you run it through, and you're just like, oh, it feels so good. just watch the whole thing go through, and it goes back through this way. I love that thing.
Well, I don't know how Michael Campbell was, but Glenn McKinnon, who I took it with, if you could not have any little tiny bit of ink anywhere, or it was like, do not hand it in. So if you got a little squidge here or wherever, or anything happened to it. So of course when you first learned printmaking, you got like
ink everywhere. Ink. Oh, I have ink on my hands, and I picked it up.
Poor blankets. Like once you learn, then you're like, oh my god, those blankets are so freaking expensive. And
Michael drilled it into our heads to like make sure your plate is really shaved down. Because you don't want to cut the blankets. You don't want to cut them because they get cut and they're expensive, right?
Exactly.
And what was it that I was thinking of? This is something. We have a press at work actually.
Oh,
so this is and by a press I mean it's a laminator. So it's like two big rollers that go together, and then this is how you put signs on coroplast, right?
Right.
You print it. Laminate it, whatever, and then it's really just a giant sticker. I get to just put stickers on things for a living now, and it's fantastic. They're just really big, right? And I run it through the laminator because it laminates things, but also you can just run it through to apply it to something,
right?
And it applies it nice and evenly, right? But that is kind of the same thing with the alu panel. If you get like an alu panel sign made, and so it's like this big, right? And you have like your graphic, right? So we make it, we cut it, and then we put it on top and tape it kind of in place, and then you apply it. So you peel off the back and you apply it with the roller. But my boss does the same thing where he's just like, you want to make sure if there's any little pointy bits on the alu panel where they cut it. Even when we cut it too, we have a cutter, right? You don't want there to be pointy bits because then you damage the roller, and those rollers are really expensive, right? And you can see where it's been nicked by knives and whatnot, right? So I go along the edges same way I did in printmaking, where you just go along and you bevel it down a little bit so that it doesn't like cut into the roller when it goes through.
I was so impressed,
and I told him, I was just like, this reminds me of something, but I'm really not sure. But like I know what you're talking about. You don't want to cut the rollers and I did it a few times. I was like, oh, printmaking. That's where it was, right? Don't cut the blankets.
Those things stick with us. So you go to, or have gone to Drink and Draw, which unfortunately we haven't got to have for...
I didn't go to every single one. I wanted to because I was like, I want to be social. And then I was like, I am scared of people. And
I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah, but I did go to a bunch of them, mostly because Eric put them on. And so he was like, hey, you should come down and see people.
We had Eric on the show a couple months ago, I think now. But Eric Dick is, let's see... a cometist? No.
He does comics,
He does comics. And he's an artist. So however you say that. But he runs or organizes Drink and Draw, which is just a format to be able to have a couple of pints, hang out with some right-minded people. Sometimes they also do a comic that is kind of passed around.
Oh, I've participated in many of those.
Yeah. So I
remember trying to get a horror angle on one, and then like people kept bringing it back to a funny thing, and then I would try to bring it back to like a horror thing, and then they'd bring it back to something funny, and I was just like, no, I want it to be horrifying. But that one was actually one of my favorite ones because it kept doing that where it was just like it seemed like it was going dark, and then it was like somebody stupid little pun, and then it was just like then I would get it back and I'd put it back to like a dark, like deep thing, and then they would put it back to something fun. In the end, I think it was like, and that's how I became a supernatural investigator or something like that. Was how it ended. But oh god, they're so fun.
They are having those opportunities, especially for those like you and I who want to be around people but don't really want to be around people. Those are still nice things to be able to have.
Oh yeah.
That, and then the owl poetry reading that is organized too, and I think when we're talking about writers and artists, it seems like most artists I talk to are writers as well.
Oh yeah. I think at some point you don't really. You can't really stay away from it. It's just kind of like, I can do more if I like write something. And there's something you can do with writing that you can't really do with art or with comics, right?
Yeah.
And but it's, I don't know. I kind of found it unavoidable at some point.
Well, we're thinking of, there's a bunch of, now that I've interviewed a few people, there's a few of us that are like, yes, we create art and we write and we should be doing that. So I'll have to keep you in the loop if we ever are able to organize anything in the near future. I'll let you know at least. Because I think there is something that could be great camaraderie between people who do create art and then write, which is another art form. I don't mean to say it's not an art form, but then who also write. And I think there's an interesting thing there somehow that can be talked about and worked out about, and I think it'd be nice to get like-minded people together and to see the different processes that people have, and to be able to share our writing too, of course, right? It's hard but good to share it and get that feedback back.
God, sharing your stuff is always so difficult because it's just like it's not perfect. One thing though that I try to this is a problem with being someone who likes to, I like to draw things, and I'm like, I want to share this with people. And then I want to show it to people, so I usually throw it on Twitter, and I'm just like, it's a thing, there you go, right? And so, and it's just like, I'll do something that I'm like, I don't really like how this looks. I'm like, I don't really want to show people this, and I'm like, I don't have to. I can just have it, like, I can just draw stuff that I don't want to show people, right? And it's just like, once you accept that, it's a bit easier to like, I'm going to experiment with painting. Well, this doesn't look very good. Yeah. Oh, well, it's another page in my sketchbook. Flip to the next page, do something else, right?
Or, I mean, then you can do it in a different
you can just try. You can do whatever you want. I'm trying to do more painting again, and I'm like, it's not perfect, but I'm like, I don't have to show anybody this. I can just flip to the next page. There you go, right?
Yeah, I'm kidding. Start anew.
Yeah, you don't have to share everything. You can keep some stuff to yourself too. There's a lot of drawings I've done where I'm like, they're very indulgent, and then they're very like, no one else is going to be interested in this except me, but I like looking at it. I drew it, I like it, but I'm like, this isn't really, I don't think I want to share this with someone else. This is personal, right?
Yeah, and not everything has to be shared.
Yeah, no, you can keep stuff to yourself. It's actually kind of nice to be like, I drew this thing and no one else is gonna like it, but I like it. I'll just keep it around.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully we'll see you out at the Drink and Draw.
Oh God, I would love to. It's bizarre this whole like having to stay away from people, because I've always been kind of like that, but now it's like, I've been like that for many, many months, and there's been no point in time where it's like, oh man, I wish I could hang out with people. I can't right now. Now I like just want to.
I think there does come a point because that's what I thought too. I was like, this is going to be great for me because I have an excuse for not going anywhere.
Yeah, oh God,
so this will be good. But I found, there are certain things that you do.
I'm just
you
like,
do
I just
miss
want to
for
hang out
sure.
with people. I want to draw stupid comics with people.
We used to, I had a friend that I used to organize a thing called Dr. Sketchy's Anti-Art School. And it started by Molly somebody in New York. Yeah, I can't remember her last name. But it's burlesque drawings. So you have burlesque models.
Oh, fun.
And then, and we did do a couple down at the Owl and then some in some different other places. But they were wonderful because we had these like amazing models, but in this sort of cabaret style. So even, they're in a pub and people are talking and they're having their drinks, but there's live models at the front that they're doing their thing. So it was, we'll have to hopefully bring that back at some point too. Thanks for joining me, Amanda.
No, it was fun. I was excited. I get to talk to somebody. I love talking about art and stuff, so I'm all about it.
The perfect guest then. You really want someone who likes talking about art and not the opposite. But, thanks again.
Yee.
Cheers.
And so I do have like an online portfolio that I have. But Instagram, actually, that's interesting because that's the one that I'm like the least compatible with in terms of I'm like Instagram. I don't know how. I'm all over Twitter, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta post to Instagram too, and I'll like dump a bunch of art in there.
See, that's interesting you say it because I'm the opposite.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like Twitter. I just never got it. I don't know if I'm just like that generation too far or whatever, but I'm like, how do I keep up with what's going on?
The only reason I have an Instagram is because oddly enough, Eric Dick. So he's older than me, and he was telling me to get with the times and get an Instagram because he's like, oh yeah, my engagement's like twice over there than what it is on Twitter, right? And I was like, I guess I'll try it, but I do like digital art, and I actually find mostly it's the posting to Instagram is like harder when it's digital art because it's like,
oh, is that right?
Oh yeah, because you can't post to it from a desktop. You have to do it from your phone or from a mobile, unless you trick. There's a way you can trick your desktop into thinking it's a mobile, and then it can like, but you have to get into like inspect the element, get into all the coding of the page, and it's like ugh.
Okay, coding.
But and it's like you can figure out how to do it. And then the other thing too is like it likes to crop things in a square shape.
Yeah. You've got
and
to have
when
a square.
when you have a portrait that's like this, it crops it and it force crops it, and it's like and I'll have something that's tall, and it's like I can't figure out how to get, so I gotta like somehow put like an extra black space next to it so it's more square, and then it's small.
I know,
very weird. But Twitter doesn't really do that. It's just it'll crop it, but you can open up the whole picture and see it,
right?
And you can also post to it from desktop. So I just like put it all on there, and then I go, oh, I like this one and this one. I'll put those on my Instagram and try to figure out how to get it on there.
I guess it is easier from your phone to make it the square, isn't it?
And actually what I do in order to post it to Instagram, I go on my Twitter, I save the picture to my phone, and then I post it to Instagram from my phone. So it's that whole process is why I forget about Instagram all the time. Oh yeah, I should do that. What's the last thing I posted? Okay, get these 3 pictures, put them on there. So Instagram's, I like it, but it's like I wish it was more friendly to digital artists in a way.
I'm not a digital artist, so that didn't occur to me. There's a lot of things that are frustrating, like having to have just the square, because I do a lot of my work is body work, and so then all of a sudden you've got to have this square.
The composition is more square.
But I really like Instagram because it's just pictures and it's just nice, and it's just after Facebook I don't look at really at all anymore.
Oh, me neither. I don't. The only reason I have a Facebook still is because I like the group chat stuff. Like the group chat stuff is fantastic. It's perfect, but it's like everything else of Facebook, I'm like, nah. No. Don't really ever need to use it anymore.
No, it's so true.
Yeah.
Okay, so